Well, we got my 70th birthday coming up soon, October.
Yeah.
We all are 70.
You'll be on BCTV. You'll be on the internet. I'll send you down to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund organization in Washington, D.C., run by Jan Scruggs. Scruggs, as you probably well know, is the guy that built the Vietnam War Memorial.
I've never been there. I've always wanted to go.
You need to go, Bill.
I've seen the traveling wall 4 times.
Yeah.
It was in Bennington. It was in Rutland.
All right. Thanks very much, Roland. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're rolling, so you can begin whenever you like.
We're ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. Remember, Bill, just give it a second,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to be in the video, just you are. Okay? So let me take you back to your high school days, your class of
okay.
1964. So tell people, were you aware that Vietnam was underway when you were a high school kid, or was that something you didn't know anything about?
Actually, everybody reads papers, and Vietnam was sort of like an event, but nobody really paid much attention to it. People like myself wanted to go in the service. We just went in the service, so we did our thing. When I went for my physical, I actually tried to get into the Navy, and they flunked me because I can't hear very well. So later on, I joined the Army. And when I went to the Army, I flunked the physical again. But I told the guy I was an Eagle Scout, and I had to serve. So he let me go. So my adventure started June 25th, 15 days after I graduated from high school. We were off to join the service. When we got to Fort Dix, we were there. They put all New England boys in one group. ERs from Rhode Island, NGs from Connecticut, Vermont, New Hampshire high school. We were the first cycle in these brand new barracks, Company M, 3rd Training Regiment. So every day VIPs come down and look at us, and they're a real pain in the ass making us clean and run through our basic. So being we were all New England boys, basic training was like a Boy Scout camp. We all ran through it, qualified with rifle. PT tests, military training was a joke, but we did what we had to do. So my first year or so, I was a cook. I got bounced around. I spent time at Fort Belvoir, stayed there for a while. I re-enlisted in '66 to go to photo school, and I wanted to go to Germany, so they gave me my wish.
Bill, before you go on, let me back you up just a little bit. Was there a discussion between you and other high school kids, like, I'm going to enlist right out of high school, and other kids were saying, you're insane to do that, or I'm not going to do that, or what was the general attitude?
The general attitude is, Vermont was a slow country, slow town, slow thing. So there really wasn't a lot of feeling. There was a lot of veterans that were concerned because they were in Korea in the 50s. But nobody really mattered about Vietnam. Was not really an issue. It was just something you read about. So it didn't really matter in '64 until the war got really going. And then the draft took over big time, and everything got serious. But in '64, military operations were changing formats. We had new barracks. We had equipment update from Korea. So we were part of that, but it wasn't really geared for the war. We were still using M16s. We never saw an M14. But this was 64. So it was really quiet time.
Let me ask you, when you were in the basic training, what was the scuttlebutt among the soldiers that you were with day in and day out? You wanted to go to Germany, were others thinking of other places, or was Vietnam the prime place that people felt
Vietnam wasn't really discussed in basic training.
Bill, hang on just a second. Remember to give me that second. Otherwise, my voice is going to overlap, and I don't want to be in the video.
Yeah.
So just give me a second. If you could start over again, that Vietnam wasn't in the basic training. Go ahead.
Well, Vietnam was not discussed on the level that training made a difference. We had so many NGs and ERs and USs. They just wanted to get basic training over with. The war wasn't really produced in 64, 65. It was just things are going to happen and people just joined. So we had a couple Vietnam vet instructors, but they were special forces. They weren't regular Army Vietnam soldiers. They were trainer soldiers. So the war really didn't shape up when I was in basic training.
Let me just interject here and say that the first 2 Marine combat battalions arrived in Da Nang March 8, 1965. So you're in basic training before the United States had formally committed its own boys to do the job.
Well, this is understandable. In the mid-60s, they started the JFK Warfare Center at Fort Bragg. It was designed for Asian forces combat. And a lot of units that were Ranger trained or special forces went through it. So that was the start of the major training for special forces was at Fort Bragg. But all basic training like Fort Polk, Fort Lewis, Fort Knox, Fort Gordon, they were just trainee units. Get them in, teach them something, and get them off to a school. They weren't really designed to be anybody. So the issues were, we got to find a job for you. We'll give you a job if you like it or not, and you do it. So when I was at Belvoir in '66, I was with a combat engineer unit, and they were the only Army engineer corps that could build asphalt on the road. They used to go to state parks and go to foreign countries and build highways. This whole battalion went to Vietnam in '66. That was the first unit I ever knew that went as a unit. Combat engineers, their dump trucks, graders, and their asphalt.
And Bill, where were you at that time? Where were you personally when they went off?
Well, being I re-enlisted, I was put in the student unit, Company G, 2nd Training Regiment. And this regiment was, they taught people how to be generators, refrigerator people, electronics, basic electronics school. So this school was designed just to teach people how to run Army equipment. So I went to photo school at Fort Monmouth in '66. And I was off to Germany. So the first couple of years, Vietnam was still readable. Even in Europe, we got papers, the Star Stripe paper and other military material. We were always getting briefings on what was going wrong. So we just lived through that. In '68, when I was there, I decided I had enough of Germany, so I volunteered to go to Vietnam. I was on one of the first levies, but that was one of the biggest failures the American forces did. They sent all these trained troops to Vietnam from Germany. They had no concept of Asian hot weather. So it was really, really amazing that every month they'd send 2,000 or 3,000 troops over there to fill in before they could get real troops trained. And I was part of that. I was one of the few unit they went over as a trainee troop episode. The biggest thing is, in '66, '67, we were being kicked out of France. So my photo duties were taking pictures of trucks, people, and other machines that were being moved out of France. But it was just a bad time to be in Europe in the '60s.
A lot of anti-American sentiment.
Well, they wanted our money and they wanted us out. The French were having a tough time because they'd loused the Vietnam War up and the Americans were mad at them. So they kicked France. France kicked all American forces equipment. Anything we couldn't move became part of France. We were moving everything that could get on a truck. And there were convoys after convoys of everything the Army owned we could move. Some of these trucks would run over cars. Some of these trucks would run into buildings. We had to take pictures of all the formality. It was a real challenge.
Why don't we pick up here, Bill? I don't want to rush you per se, but just a moment ago you said that you arrived in Vietnam. Could you tell people the journey you took to get to Vietnam, where you landed in Vietnam?
Well, Vietnam is divided in regions. So there's a Delta region, there's a Highland region. Pleiku was where the 4th Infantry and the 1st Cav and a couple other divisions had base camps. So my MOS was needed, my job, MOS, was needed with aerial recon. So instead of going to the 4th Infantry like I was supposed to, I wound up with the 1st Cav. So the 1st Cav was, we lived in the field, we lived on LZs. We had it pretty rough. Our LZs were fired upon constantly, motored attack. We lost a few planes on the ground. We were there from a good part of '68. In '69, our division, 1st Cav Division, moved north to I Corps. We set up Camp Evans. It was like 8 miles from Way. We were at Phu Bai. Phu Bai is the biggest airfield outside of Saigon. It's where the Marine Air Wing is. So my job was at the airport. We were developing film and making prints for Army, Air Force. We were there for the Battle of Way.
During the Tet Offensive.
Well, the Tet Offense had ended. They had the counter Tet Offense, and then the Battle of Way, Khe Sanh. The Battle of Way was a major confluence. They had 1st Cav, 3 brigades. They had the Marine 3rd Division out of Da Nang, the whole division, and they had a bunch of South Vietnamese Army trying to hold it. Well, the North Vietnamese had captured the Way. Then all of a sudden the Cav wanted to take it, and they didn't want to hurt, so they let it go. But we were there for the Battle of Way. We lost a lot of helicopters in the air. Our gunships were targets.
Can you take a minute here, Bill? You seemingly were fighting side by side with Arvin at the time. Will you tell us a little bit about Arvin, your experiences with the South Vietnamese Army, the Army of the Republic of Vietnam?
Well, in the sense, Vietnamese were around us, being that we were a airplane unit, Mohawks. We had Mohawks, aerial recon planes. None of them were allowed in our area. We were fenced off, barbed wired in. They were around us. We found the South Vietnamese were worthless. They wouldn't do what they were told. They wouldn't hold their ground, and they just wouldn't stay trained. When we were there was a bunch of Koreans came over. Those were real soldiers. Korean soldiers were real soldiers. They fight hand in hand. They fought with our infantry. Our biggest unit job was we were a holdover unit. The infantry would go out in the field for 10, 12 days, and they'd come in. We'd give them showers, feed them, doctor them up, stuff them full of popcorn, and send them back out in the field. And they would guard us. We didn't have enough troops to guard our own people, but these infantry units would be on maneuvers. So we were constantly wake up in the morning and find 200 bodies laying outside our tents. They came in during the night. The next day they'd be on helicopters, moving to another unit. And we'd give them showers, show them movies, patch them up. Morale factors were really high in those days. Play a lot of music for them. Give them a basketball court to play on. Them Africans from Chicago had to play basketball. They play all day and night. There'd be a firefight going on, and they'd be playing basketball out there. It was unreal.
Back to Hue again. Did you have any contact with the NVA or the VC when you were in and around Hue in 1968?
Well, we were a third line defense because our unit was guarded by the 3rd Marine Wing. So our major thing was we went to the third line and held ground. If they broke through, then we were next. So we really weren't involved in the actual combat, except we were support. We'd bring ammo and food and carry out whoever gets shot up. So a lot of these units were just support units. I mean, the major battle unit was the 3rd Marine Division, part of the 5th, and the 1st to the 9th. Our infantry regiments were in there. So we supported them. So it wasn't like we were on hand in hand. We were just bringing them ammo, giving them water, taking care of the sick ones.
Were you getting lots of reports that the combat was actually hand-to-hand around Hue?
Well, we understood that Hue was a big area, and there were a lot of combat forces around Hue. Hue was a northern area that we could go to. We couldn't cross into North Vietnam, but Hue was right on the border. There's a lot of water up in Hue, a lot of waterways. So there was a lot of infantry in and around the area. So that was the main thing. We had to try to get them out of Hue. They ran out the back door. South Vietnamese fell apart. They let them run. The 3rd Marine Division the 2nd and the 7th were chasing them. We lost like 17 helicopters in one day trying to chase them out of the way. It was a big loss. Cav lost unbelievable bodies in that battle. The battle lasted 9 days, nonstop. And it was, once it was over with, everybody was happy.
Have you ever had any interest, as life's gone on, you're just shy of your 70th birthday, so you've been away from Vietnam for a long time. Any interest in going back to a place like Hue and seeing?
Well, I'm intelligent enough to look it up, and Hue, the imperial capital of Vietnam, would be a beautiful city to visit. They were driving trucks on the wall. Walls were 8 feet thick, and they were driving trucks and artillery on top of the wall. It would be neat to see, like the Great Wall of China, how they built that thing. So if I had any interest, I'd like to go to Phu Bai and visit Hue, which is only like 12 miles. Camp Evans was 8 miles on the other side. So Camp Evans was a forward base camp. That was a hopping place. It had a small LZ, but a lot of air traffic.
Let me ask you another question, Bill. If you were to get on an airplane today and arrive back at Hue or Camp Evans or where you were stationed, how would you look at the Vietnamese people, and how would you expect they would look at you?
Well, most of those people are all dead now, so we're talking a different generation. I think Americans go over there, they just want our money. The war is something to talk about, so we give them more money. I think the average Vietnamese people now the war is gone and they all rebuilt. Most of them are dead. They don't live that long over there. I mean, we're talking 40 years since the war, and that's 2 generations. And a lot of these people just don't live that long.
Let me ask you another question. I think you said that you were in Quezon as well?
Well, our division was in Quezon. The 2nd and the 7th went up to Quezon. And what's really misleading is they blame the Americans for laying all those mines, but 2/3 of the mines in Quezon were French. That means the North Vietnamese laid these mines. Mines just took a bad rap. We were on LZs. We had Claymore mines defending us. If it wasn't for Claymores, we would have lost a lot of LZs. I really get down on the thing. They're blaming all these landmines or one things, but Claymores, they were the biggest defense the American had to survive. So the French never took credit for laying mines. The North Vietnamese never took credit for laying the mines. They just blamed all these glory units come down on American forces for laying mines. It wasn't like that. The only time they laid mines was for defense. They didn't go out in fields and lay mines just hoping somebody would run over them. That's the way the North Vietnamese did.
Now, Bill, you know that I'm part of, although it's dormant right now, an organization that seeks to help people from getting hurt. And this organization doesn't care whether they're French, whether the North Vietnamese put them out, the Americans put them out. It doesn't make any difference who put them out. And you've been to a couple of those presentations.
Yeah.
Can you tell the audience how you feel about American kids becoming involved in an effort to stop people from getting hurt today by leftover UXOs?
Well, the sad, sick part about laying mines is today you do the job. You go out, do your job, whether it's laying mines or artillery or what it is. The next day, you worry about what you did the day before. So if you start thinking like that, that attitude is, if your job is to lay a mine, you lay a mine. Okay, so they say, you got to go dig them back up. Okay, you go back out and dig them back up. It takes real special people to dig mines up. And that wasn't really part of the war. Part of the war was to make these mines work. So now the war is over with and American forces are there. We're digging up these mines and try to find all the bombs that were there. We can live with that. That's really good. But it's not like the rap, we did this because we wanted to kill these people. We did this because we wanted to defend ourselves. I mean, you got an LZ in the middle of nowhere. There's a swamp on one side and a river on the other. And you're in the middle of nowhere, and all you got around you is 4 strands of barbed wire, a few sandbags to hold a building together. Mines were important. They took the theory you're going to make it. The bad guy has to run over the mine, and the mine's going to help you. That's the attitude you have.
Bill, you were in Vietnam at the height of the war. You're obviously a special guy. You didn't just do your time. You re-upped. You ended up requesting to go to Vietnam. Then you got over there, and you're over there in Quezon, 1968, arguably the height of the war. And by that time, back here in the country, a lot of people had soured on the war and were blaming the politicians.
Well,
Hang on just a second. We need that little break. For hanging you guys out to dry with a flawed strategy. Was that kind of stuff a part of what you were reported on from Stars and Stripes and whatever other sources you had?
Well, first of all, being the unit I was in, military intelligence, we were between the airplanes and military intelligence II. We received top briefings on combat killed per day, operation wounded, what was happening, how many were coming, how many were going. We were briefed on major offenses coming and going. So we had a lot of feeling on just what was happening was real. I mean, we were told that 300 people got killed yesterday in Quezon. So we're asking ourselves, why did they get killed? Well, we North Vietnamese know how to fight. So the next day we get a report saying they took a hill and they stopped some people. So you get good days, you get bad days, and you're constantly fed statistics. So it's not like one day is good and one day oh yeah, we had a good day that day. We just tried to do our job. But one of the biggest failures in Vietnam, I always look back at, this troop rotation was really bad. People like myself would go over there, took 3 or 4 months to learn. You did your job for 5 months, and then you were a short timer. So everybody over there is running around with a number. I got 40 days left, and he's got 80 days. So this troop rotation was probably one of the biggest hang-ups.
Did your objective ever become to just make sure that you got out of there alive, like some people did?
Well, we were overrun. They overran our airfields. We had to defend ourselves. I earned my infantry badge on defense. I didn't really go out and fight, but I was a defensive for 5 months. I spent 5 months in a hole with my M16 and 50 caliber. So it's like we were there. We were there counting our days like everybody else, doing our job. And time just went by. So if you had a morale problem, you had a morale problem, but people just did their thing. We were kind of a special unit. We had more sources than others, but we were still right out in the field. We had our water purified, and I caught malaria over there. I mean, I got really sick. But the food we ate was real. We had real food. We didn't eat sea rations. We had sea rations available if the food shut down. But our particular unit was big time support. We had a lot of infantry, artillery people come and visit us.
Hang on a minute, Billy. Is that you, G?
Yeah.
Trouble?
Oh, no. I think it's your, I can actually hear you playing with the cord on that mic.
Oh.
Yeah.
Can
so
you
it's
just
pretty
let go
close.
of the cord, all right, Bill?
Yeah, sorry. I was going to give you a pen or something.
All right.
Here, you want to play with this? No. I get, okay. How
Okay.
long's that been going on? Quite a while?
30 minute maybe.
Okay.
It's not too bad.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, how much time are we, G?
You're about half hour.
Okay. All right. Couple more questions, Bill, all right? You all right?
Yeah.
We good? Okay. I've got your discharge papers here, so.
No separation papers.
Separation, right, okay. Yeah, your separation papers. So, before we go on, is there something else that you would want to say about your experience over there? I've tried to hit on the highlights, but I was going to move now to when you got the news that you'd be coming home. By that time, I assume you didn't want to re-up again. Could you
Well-
are we recording, G?
Yeah, we never stopped.
Okay, all right, we'll go right from here. Billy can answer that.
Well, that's kind of an odd question, but I was over there 69, January of 69. I was to come home. I got extended 90 days over there because nobody came to take my place. So I spent a year and 3 months. I actually signed a re-enlistment paper for 6 years. But what happened was, they wouldn't let me out. They told me they were going to send me to Fort Bragg. So I went to Fort Bragg. I got a bad taste of what Fort Bragg was. So I went in and tore my re-enlistment paper in half and threw it at the commander and told him I want to go home.
Could you explain why, elaborate on that? What gave you the bad taste?
I just had enough. Fort Bragg was like, this is a #1 combat base outside of Fort Benning, the U.S. forces. JFK Center's down the road, the 82nd's on the other side. It's just one combat madhouse. It was like war was real. Everybody wanted to go. Everybody wanted to come home. Everybody had to do something. And people just said, enough is enough. I want to go home.
Were you finding that there were green guys there training who were going to go over to Vietnam? You'd just come back. Were you finding that you wanted to say something to them, give them some advice, or?
Well, when I was at Bragg, I was in a holdover unit for rejects. People coming in and people going out. We had people going to Korea, and we had people going to Thailand, people going to Okinawa. They weren't all going to Vietnam. So this madhouse is, you had your gun-hole people want to go to Vietnam and play soldier. You had these people that had been in the Army who just wanted to make a quick rank and get out. So there was a lot of feeling. Some want to go, some don't want to go. If you got to go, you do it. So it was just a nasty taste of who was on whose side. By then, everybody was protesting the war. It was just unbearable. I mean, we heard more bad about the war than the war was going on. We were fighting the people on the streets rather than fighting the people in the war.
Can you talk about that also? When you're at Fort Bragg, I assume you're not fighting people on the streets, but eventually you're going to leave there and work your way back to Brattleboro.
Well,
hang on just a second. When did it kind of hit you that you were fighting your own citizens?
in a broad sense, it was like somebody had been over there, been back. If you were a combat soldier, you were considered a bad guy. If you were over there as a support soldier, they said, well, he did a job. He put you in different classes. So they had this town outside of Fort Bragg. It was also near Camp Lejeune, Parris Island. So this town, Fayetteville, really had a bad deal. You go downtown, and they're full of Marines, full of Navy, and all kinds of rejects from the Army. They're literally fighting on the streets because Marines were heroes and they all wanted to win the war. The people were there don't want to talk about the war. They just want to go home. So, I mean, I remember going into bars and literally somebody mock American soldier or some Marine would stand up and say, we're the ones winning the war. So we physically fight these guys. It was really awesome. That's what turned the war bad. Nobody would be a team. It was all, they did this, we did that. And they kept going back and forth. But Fayetteville was just a battlegrounds. I mean, it was really, really raw.
So let's go now to, you left Fayetteville, Fort Bragg, and let's work your way back to Brattleboro.
Well, my time ended June 24th, 1969. I ended my job. My biggest job at Fort Bragg was get people up in the morning, get them dressed. We had a lot of people that come in just totally wasted. I was like a barracks sergeant. Get these people up in the morning, make sure they got boots on, socks. Some of them don't even wear socks anymore. We have to get them dressed, get them going. And I just felt sorry. I'm leaving, but I gotta go. So I got on my bus and I came home. I took the job I had when I left. When I left Brattleboro, I was making $1.20 an hour, working nights. I worked my senior year in high school. I go to school days and work nights in a factory. I did that for a year. I came back in '69 and did the same job. I made $2.38 after 5 years. It was just awesome. But when you come back, you see, it was '69. The war was heating up. The drafted, everybody says, when are you going to get drafted? You know, it was like, because they didn't see you in uniform or they didn't think you were capable of going in the service. When are you going to go? I mean, it was the attitude of a lot of people around here. Oh, my father fought in Korea. You ought to go, you know. Garbage talk. But things didn't calm down until after '75, where things were just plain unreal.
Before we go to 1975, Bill, did you feel inclined to wear anything that would identify you as a veteran? I mean, you have your hat on today.
No, I got out of the service. I burned everything. I got a trash can and I put all my boots in it, poured some lighter fluid on it, said a couple prayers, and I burned everything.
Can you explain why? Bill, why would you do that?
If nobody cared, why should I? My worst story, 1969, I met Paul Dart, my neighbor across the street. I met him and flew by. He was with the 2nd or the 7th. He came in and I actually met a hometown boy. I came home in 69. I buried him. It took me years to get over that. I never went to school with a guy. I never really liked him. We lived across the street on Clark Street. He had 3 beautiful sisters. They're dark girls and a nice mother. But he was a hometown boy. He went to Vietnam 3 times. His 3rd time he didn't come home. I envy the guy. I still honor him today. It was really bad. He come home and I wanted to tell his mother I met him. Before I could tell her I met him, I went to his funeral in St. Michael's. But today we just lick our wounds and keep going. But it was just my story.
Are you still having to lick your wounds, Bill, or have times changed? Are you and other veterans like yourselves looked at appropriately in your opinion, or it's the same old song?
No, if you get hang up in the veterans, you become one of the freaks. They got that group up in White River called Vietnam Vets. Once you join the Vietnam Vet group, you become one of them. You know, they single you out. You all got problems. We all have problems. All people try to work things out. But people like myself, we just want to keep going and do what we can do. With Vietnam vets, some feel sorry for themselves and others run around, and I honor myself as a person. I honor myself as a vet. I'm proud to say I served. I didn't have to go. I went. I came back. I did my job as an American. When you talk to vets today, they're either got a story to tell you, they don't want to be bothered, or they're just feeling bad. I mean, we came home and they hate us. These people go to Iran, Iraq, wherever it is, they come back a war hero. But war is war. Vietnam vets have changed. A lot of them feel sorry for themselves and they just want to go on. But a lot of veterans, the wars are gone. We just do a new thing.
Do you feel like your group has paid the price historically, and now America's attitude has changed so that when people come home from Afghanistan, Iraq, you just said they're treated as heroes. Your group wasn't. Do you think America learned its lesson from what happened to your group and it's not being repeated?
Well, today's generation doesn't give a shit about anything. So you're getting an attitude change. That question's kind of misleading. You got the people that are over 60 were part of this thing. You got these people that are 40 or 50. Well, war is something we read about. They teach you in school. You did this war, we did that war. They just teach you. What the basic thing is just the attitude change. I mean, Americans are taking better care of their people now. I mean, the VA system has really got going, and a lot of other programs around. But war is war. If you want to sit and talk war, you'll find your warmongers who'll tell you all about it. Most people just go on like myself. I don't go to the VFW anymore. I just don't bother. But anytime you get two veterans together, they start talking about old days. You know, you don't cut lies. They all lie. But the idea is you don't need to hear that garbage. So people just go on and try to show a little bit of pride and keep moving, like myself. We just do what we got to do and keep going.
William, thank you. What do you think? We okay? G? We okay? How much time, G?
46 minutes.
Okay. And some of that's my questions and whatnot, so.
Yeah, it's probably about 42, 43 minutes of footage of
Yeah.
interview.
Yeah. We'll have to be careful. Bill took issue with one of my questions there, misleading question, so we'll just have to make sure that the audience knows what it was, but I don't want them to hear me.
We'll take care of it.
Yeah, we'll fix it. All right. You want to shut that thing down?
We're all set?
I think so, Bill. We okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, G. That's Reggie Martell.